Okay, so I think I will officially introduce the start of our webinar. And then by the time we've done all the introductions, if there's any more people coming in, we will be doing all of our important talking. So just to introduce myself first, my name is Maya and I work in marketing for the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra. I just want to say a huge warm welcome. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Thank you especially to Safié and Kathryn for joining us for this Q&A webinar. We're so happy to see a huge range of attendees. We've got teachers, we've got students, we have both past participants and observers from the Piano Festival, and also some people that will be attending this year. So that's very exciting to see. I'm delighted to start off by introducing everybody to Dr. Safié Ashtiani. She is a trustee and the chair of our advisory board at the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra. Alongside this, she's a pianist herself, and she is a long-time supporter of both the orchestra and of the Piano Festival. I will now hand over to her for her to introduce our wonderful guest today, Kathryn Stott.
Thank you so much, Maya. And first of all, a big welcome to Kathryn Stott, one of my inspirations as a pianist. Kathy is known to all of us as a leading luminous voice in the piano world with a very wide-ranging repertoire, a particular love of French music, I think we can all say, and perhaps especially of Fauré. Those of us who have had the opportunity to listen to her wonderful program, Musical Moments with Fauré, will never forget some of those insights that we had from Kathy. And these probably emanated from the fact that at a very young age, she went off to board at the Menuhin School at the age of 8. She was exposed to Nadia Boulanger and Vlado Permuter, so her love of French music is deep. But the other thing that's known about Kathy is her eclecticism and her really wide knowledge of the piano repertoire and her deep insights, where she, I hope she won't be embarrassed at my saying this, combines a true sensitivity with a kind of robust intellectualism, which always makes her a joy to listen to. So, Kathy, it's my enormous pleasure to be talking to you today and to have you captured for 45 minutes to be able to talk like this. Can I start off by just asking you a little bit about your life as a performer, the sort of highlights of it, what you've enjoyed most, who you've enjoyed most collaborating with, what kind of things you've most enjoyed doing?
Oh my gosh, Safi, first of all, thank you so much for that really gorgeous welcome. It's really so nice to chat to you now, and thank you to everybody that's joined us to listen. Where do I start with that question? It's a tricky one because people often sort of say to me, you know, what was the best place that you ever played? What's your favorite? And actually, I don't have one. So that's probably the first disappointing thing I'm going to come up with. I think what I've loved about, I've been so lucky in this profession, is meeting people, sort of connecting people, and through music. So, you know, when you're sitting on a stage, that's one thing. You're connecting with people immediately. I love that kind of sense of collective listening. I like myself now to be on the other side of the fence. And you just have a kind of moment to share something deep with people. So I think it's that. Sitting in a room and studying music is also equally fascinating. But there's two sides to all that. So you have to ask yourself, why do we do any of it? Do we do it to sit and study? Do we do it to kind of sit and study and then share? I think I've enjoyed absolutely all aspects of that, to even the lonely parts of it. Then meeting people, and it's an incredible, you know, profession to be part of if you're fortunate enough to be sort of traveling, and you know, fantastic to just connect with so many different cultures.
I love that idea of a sense of collective consciousness that's sort of mediated through the music. It's a wonderful thought of that collectivity. I mean, you are known for being both having a very wide repertoire and also being very enamoured of French and also English music. And will you tell us a bit more about the things that you most enjoy playing?
I think with the repertoire, I have always sort of gravitated towards French music, and Fauré, you're right. I mean, he's been a sort of constant. I was going to say he's been the only constant man in my life, but that's another subject. But you know, he really has been that kind of figure from being a small girl to sort of playing his music since I was 8.
That shows how precocious you were. Fauré is not usually fair for an 8-year-old.
No, I did start off with the Berceuse of the Dolly Suite, but I did soon kind of graduate to other things. But I've just always felt a sort of special language there that meant something to me, and I really desperately wanted to bring his music to other people. But I think actually, I really have a great curiosity. And so the older I've got, the more I wanted to explore this. I mean, as a pianist, and you know, young pianists that are listening now, they will know that, you know, that there is so much to explore. Of course, you know, even if we just stayed within the kind of classical canon, I mean classical by the core, let's use that word better, a core canon of repertoire. That in itself is absolutely enormous, but there's so much around. There's so much music from countries we don't think about. You know, one of my great joys has been being an artistic director, and I've been doing that on and off since 1995. And I bring that up because apart from the great love of bringing people together, that's another thing I really, really enjoyed, thinking, oh, that person might play really well with that person. What if they played that piece? You know, I love all that jigsaw. And I was really fortunate for a couple of years to direct a chamber music festival in Australia.
Yes.
And, you know, I just was so unaware of Australian composers. This is like, you know, you could be playing their music forever. There is so much to explore. Same when I went to New Zealand.
Yes. Yes. Well, you're known for often finding not only your interpretation of the core canon, but often finding things that none of us has ever heard of before. And I sometimes wonder where you find all this music that you bring to us.
I think that, you know, we're very fortunate now that we've got the internet and we've got access, and you know, there's tons of stuff out there on YouTube and wherever. So it's much easier than when I first started, you know, actually locating music. Before that, it was kind of word of mouth or actually going to concerts.
Right.
I can remember as a young girl being taken to concerts of Rubinstein. And he always was waving the flag for Villa-Lobos because he toured a lot to South America. So you sort of think, oh, Villa-Lobos, that's interesting. Rubinstein likes that. I think Hinnersterer he used to play. And so various performers would sort of have to do that. And then it was up to us to kind of check it out. Now you can sit there and you can put in, you know, title of something really unusual and something will pop up.
Yes, you're so right. But I wonder if your early exposure to Villa-Lobos was a kind of thread to your work on the tango, which is, you know, which is so lovely.
Well, that came through a different route, and that came via my great friend Yo-Yo Ma, and he had been to Argentina before me. And after his trip there, I received a very excitable phone call from him and saying we have to play something by Piazzolla. And it's hard to imagine now that we kind of don't know that name. And I can't remember the year that he called me. It was about 30 years ago, maybe. And I was thinking, who's Piazzolla?
Yes, I completely recognize that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think this is a good example actually to take, because I started with Piazzolla and didn't really understand it to start with, and we were surrounded by great tango musicians, so they taught us. We were the first to sort of say we don't know anything about it. teachers, everything. But then I sort of thought, well, what else is there? You know what? And then I started delving into the history of tango and looked at the original old singers, Carlos Gardel, and then I went to Buenos Aires. I thought I have to see it for myself.
Oh my goodness.
So that's a little bit my nature. That something might pop up, and then from that, I think, what does that lead to? Is there something else I can explore? So I do count myself as a bit of an explorer, and I've kept moving, and that's been the way that I've kept myself fulfilled musically.
Oh, that's so inspirational, I think, for a lot of people listening as well. Before I'd like to move on to Yo-Yo Ma and your collaboration together, but before I do, I must ask you a cheeky question. Did you learn to tango?
No, is the answer.
So if I go on the web, I won't find videos of you dancing. Oh,
lucky for you, you won't find it. I did have a go. I did go to a few tango clubs and sort of heard tango in its kind of real environment. And I think there was one I went to where there was some opportunity to kind of get up and dance and whatever. But I thought, no, it's supremely difficult.
Oh yes.
It looks amazing. It looks, I don't know, who knows, maybe in another life.
Well, you play it so beautifully, you know. Now, can I ask you a bit about, I mean, you and Yo-Yo, because the story of how you met is so funny, and I don't know if all the audience knows about it, but I gather that he was renting, as he thought, a flat from Nigel Kennedy, but then actually it was a flat that you and Nigel Kennedy shared, so you were each surprised, you and Yo-Yo were each surprised to find the other in the flat, or something along those lines.
Something along those lines. Nigel Kennedy, it was actually his flat, his auntie's flat, and I lived there also with my boyfriend, and we'd been away for the summer holidays. So as a student, just finishing my third year undergrad student life, and had a summer holiday, and I came back and literally found Yo-Yo and his wife living in the flat. I know Nigel, and Nigel had sublet the flat for 6 weeks, and so I didn't know they were going to be there, and they didn't know I lived there or we lived there. And it was just before I entered the Leeds piano competition, so I think probably I was practicing 6-7 hours a day, something like that, in my little upright in my bedroom. So I don't think it was very peaceful, but that's how we met.
And then the artistic spark between you, which is so well known.
Yeah, that came later. I think the nice thing about our collaboration is that we were friends for a very long time before. I think our first concert was in '84, and that was at the suggestion of Yo-Yo's wife. So we have her to thank for that suggestion. And it was, you know, we gave our last concert last year.
Yes.
And that was 40 years, which is an awful long time. But wonderful.
Lovely. Just lovely. And there will be, I suppose, a bit of you both that will miss it a bit, but your memories are locked in your, you know, no one can take those away.
Nobody can take those away. And I think what I'm most proud is that, you know, obviously walking out to give our final concert was, you know, I mean, I think can't pretend it wasn't a potentially difficult moment. It was an emotional moment. But what I'm most proud of is that, you know, right to the last minute, we gave it our everything as if we had never played. And I thought, actually, we can't ask for more than that. So
absolutely. What a wonderful thought. And talking of last concerts, I had the great privilege of hearing your recital in Oxford last December, which you called musical postcards. And it was the most wonderful, eclectic set of pieces you could possibly imagine, including some Piazzolla and, of course, some Fauré. Do tell us a bit about how you chose those as your kind of goodbye postcard to us as a listening audience.
Yeah, it was quite difficult because I've made up so many programs, obviously, over my lifetime, and some of them, you know, have been, you know, with great giant pieces in, you know, Liszt Sonata, late Beethoven, Schumann fantasy, all this kind of stuff. And then I thought, oh gosh, how do I choose? So first of all, I thought I would stick with smaller pieces. That way I could kind of get through more composers. And then I thought, how can I make this actually meaningful?
Mm.
And to me, the best way I could do that is to kind of connect a story or something meaningful to each composer. So for
sort of a meaningful thing for you. Yes.
So it was obviously sort of, I think the whole year was kind of one giant goodbye to people, but I didn't want it to be a kind of morose situation. So yes, there was music by Fauré. There was, because as we know, incredibly important composer to me. There was a piece by Lily Boulanger because of the connection to Nadia. Piece by Grieg because I'd done some teaching at the Oslo Academy that had been close to me, etc., etc.
Yes.
But supremely important was my final piece. And I thought, gosh, what am I going to do there?
Yes.
And so I had the idea to commission Graham Fitkin, wonderful British composer, to write yet another piece for me, because I think I've given 10, 11 world premieres of his over 25 years. And I had this similar situation where I'd asked him to write something and put it at the end of the programme. And I said, Graham, I'd like you to do the same. No pressure, but these will be the last notes I actually play publicly. And oh boy, did he. He kept me working right to the last notes, and it was great because I had no time to get kind of sentimental. I had no time to be going down memory lane with anything. I just had to really focus to the very last.
You really did. It's a wonderful piece. It's called Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly.
Exactly. And he threw me with that.
Because we were on the edge of our seats because you clearly had to give it everything. There was no respite. There was no room for sentiment in that piece.
No, there wasn't. But it was so exciting. He threw me straight away because Graham had always chosen titles. I kept nagging him, "What's the title? What's the title?" I was like, "Shut up! I haven't, thought of that yet," because he'd always come up with one-word titles.
Yes. And in fact, the earlier piece you played was a one-word title, wasn't it? Yes.
Exactly. And so this one, when he came up with Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly, it took me ages to kind of get it in my head somehow. But it's a great piece, and I hope young pianists will take it up, because the one annoying thing about world premieres is that for any composer, they don't want that one performance, or I think that year I gave a lot, actually.
Yes.
Want to send it out into the world. So I will be advocating that maybe some of my students sometime might take it up.
Quite right, quite right. Well, Kathy, it's just, I could go on talking about your career, your performing career, for a very long time, but I'm going to move us on a little bit, if I may. Before we come a bit to your teaching, tell me a bit more about what you think about. I mean, you said a bit about your priorities as an artistic director, and you have formed the vision for festivals all over the place. You mentioned the Australian one, but there are many others. I mean, you're known as someone who puts repertoire and people together. So what is it that excites you about that?
Gosh, well, I think there's, first of all, there's usually a different brief, for every place that you go to. So the very first festival I did, I created my own brief, and that was possibly, one of my all-time highs, kind of personal high, because I literally dreamt up a festival on the kitchen table.
Oh, wow.
It was to celebrate Fauré's 150th anniversary, and I just thought, nobody's doing it. Nobody's doing it anywhere. And I thought, well, I'm going to do it. So I doodled some pretend concert scenarios, and then I thought, actually, I've got to make this work. So the next minute there were 12 concerts, 4 with BBC Phil, and 8 chamber concerts. Jean-Yves Thibaudet came and played. Jan Pascal Tortelier was conducting. I think Yo-Yo came also. a whole host of amazing people, but I had to do everything, and I had to find all the money. I had to hire all the halls. 8 of the concerts were RNCM, just by chance. And it was a monster, and I sort of, I mean, it was a kind of, it took a personal toll, really, because it was such a huge thing that I'd undertaken without much help, that I sort of thought, the sense of achievement was unbelievable, but I thought, I can't go through that again. And so I was very relieved that my next few things were actually commissioned by Bridgewater Hall, which is
Yes.
wonderful hall in Manchester, where I live. And that was actually celebrations of the piano. So we did a huge one in 2000 with about year 2000 with about 50 events, same in 2003. Then I've done something for Liverpool Phil, and out in Australia, a couple of chamber festivals there, Italy, and then most recently, I think one in Sheffield. I don't know, it sounds this, but I really love that because I get to kind of explore not only people. I mean, in Australia, I had to learn about actually who the great musicians are and who was who and all that. So I took a lot of advice. I did a lot of research. I listened to people, but also it's a wonderful opportunity to explore repertoire.
Yes.
And I particularly like this kind of in the chamber music festivals, this mix and match scenarios. So you might start with, let's say, a short piece for a string quartet or something, then you might go to some songs, then you might go to a sonata for oboe and piano, and you sort of think, how on earth is that going to fit together? So then get into themes.
Yes.
And even if they're a little bit tenuous, but they can, you can make little threads somehow. And I really enjoy that because it's like being a musical detective. But ultimately you want it to just stand up, so that if somebody doesn't read anything, somebody that gives a concert and you think, actually, that held together. So I like that.
Wonderful, wonderful analogy. You solve all the clues and you've got the whole thing mapped out and it all clicks.
Well, hopefully so. I mean, I think music is, I mean, being a musician is being like it's like being a detective. When you open up a score, you are immediately like a little mini detective, working out from the get-go what the clues are. It's all there. And if it's not, you make it up. Kind of called artistic license, I suppose. But but you kind of start off with all these fantastic clues, and you kind of learn to see them, because it's quite amazing how much you look at a score and you can just be actually blind to what's a composer asking you to do, and then you have to think, well, they've put that, but somehow I don't feel it like that. Can I make it work? Or no, if I just change this a little bit, or have to decide if maybe an editor got carried away putting in something. So I think the whole thing is one musical exploration with you as detective, and then trying to solve it, but in a kind of emotional, organic way at the same time.
Oh, that's marvelous. Solving it, but also keeping that emotion, that's the sense of the spirit as well. Trying to get back to what the composer was trying to express. That's a wonderful way of putting it.
So, I mean, for myself, another musician I heard say this yesterday, wonderful Swedish cellist Mats Lindström.
Yes.
And he said, in a little video clip about being servant to music, and I thought, yes, that is fundamentally what I believe we are. Now, then you can sort of think, well, what goes on when somebody comes on stage? Is there ego involved? Is there this, that, and the other? Well, yes, sometimes there are. I think it takes kind of possibly being a little bit out of your own body to come out and perform. Let's not get into the nervous part of it. That's kind of another side. But ultimately it's like, why do you want to do it? So that brings us back to where we started, you know, that thing of sharing. But I think I always felt that I wanted to share what I'd discovered. It wasn't kind of sharing myself.
Absolutely, absolutely get that. I'm going to ask you, if I may, I'd like to move on to asking you about how teaching has developed your musicianship. But before I do, can I actually just pause for a second on that more tricky thing about how one deals with nerves and how one deals with the loneliness of travel and how one deals with making sure the ego doesn't, that the person doesn't get in the way of the music, the sort of the more tricky things that you have to deal with as a performing musician. You got any bits of advice that you often repeat? Or
Well, I often say to my students who are less experienced, of course, some suffer from nerves more than others, and if I think they're really suffering, I always say, what is the worst thing that can happen? And most people, of course, just don't want to kind of mess up in front, especially in front of their peers and whatever. I also make it quite clear that I don't think, for the most part, your audience know that you've maybe made some mistakes. And I think most of us make mistakes in every single concert. I've never given a performance that's been perfect. I've not been after that. I think you practice so that you're as solid and as safe as you possibly be, i.e. by knowing the score inside out, whether the score is in front of you or not, because I always played with a score.
Yes, you're known for that.
But I knew it inside out. There's a difference. And then, you know, the technique is really to serve the music. It's not, I mean, of course, it's very thrilling when you can kind of thrash around and go at 100 miles an hour, but that's to serve what somebody has asked you to do musically.
Yes.
And just to put down a very simple chord, it requires unbelievable control of your hands, and that's also technique. That can just be one simple fifth.
Yeah.
2 notes or something, you know. So I think I try to, with nerves, I've tried to think about perspective. You know, I've even thought sometimes about other things that are going on in the world. I think, why am I so worried about this, for goodness sake?
Yes.
And then I've actually thought, I've been working really hard. I can only do my best. I've done really my best to be prepared. And I don't want people to like come to a concert and be scared stiff. You know, people maybe have quite stressful lives that are coming to your concert. And people generally, I know when I book tickets to things, you know, you'll have lots of people coming to Oxford Piano Festival really excited about coming. And they don't just sit there scared to death.
Exactly.
So it's kind of realizing, that's why I love going to concerts, because actually it makes me remember what it's like to sit in and actually just really look forward to something, you know. So I think I think especially for young people spending a lot of time in these practice rooms, it's, you know, perspective can just go a little bit haywire.
Yes.
And I think you can learn to improve. I think I did have some very scary moments when I was younger. I think when I was about 15, I went through a very nerve-wracking phase of coming out, and I didn't know where middle C was. I just was probably hyperventilating. I didn't know anything, so I often talk about breathing, try to calm things down. Don't be like this just before concert. Try, you know, if you need to put headphones on, I did once put headphones on with sounds of the waves before I went on somewhere, so I didn't hear what was going on. I didn't want to hear the overture. And then I went through a phase of wanting the overture to come through the speakers, because I thought, oh, I want to enjoy the music and I'm going to be the next person. So, you know, you experiment, you find a way, and maybe when you come out, I'm saying these things in case we've got young pianists listening, when you come out, find a few smiling faces, hopefully people will smile looking at you and play to them, kind of engage with them rather than this kind of, I'm scared to death, I don't look at anybody. We're just all humans in a room, you know.
That's so interesting. And is that what you try and distill in your teaching as well? Don't forget, people are there to enjoy themselves. You're just there to be a bridge to the music. Or
I mean, I do say these things. It's just, you know, how much opportunity people have to perform it. I think it's difficult, you know, when people are younger, and a lot of, I mean, you know, it's exam time now. At a lot of the, you know,
yes,
colleges around the country. So people are getting very nervous and getting very worried about their things. But, you know, people have worked so hard. Bring your friends and plant friendly people in there if you can. And everybody understands. Everybody understands. And you just do your best. And if you can try to, I think what's difficult now is concentration. Concentration is not getting any easier, because the world is quite difficult to concentrate in, you know, with everything that's going on with our phones. I find sometimes people are practicing with their phones on the piano. It's really not a great idea. But we're off, you know, we're used to it. So you're all the time distracted, or it's very hard to sit there, just put the phone. I'm really tough on this. I know some people will know this. If I'm giving a class and they're not necessarily my students or something, they don't know me, the first thing I keep going on about, please put your phone away. Just listen, just be there. Not necessarily to hear what I have to say, just support your colleague and listen to what they have, because they're possibly a little bit nervous about playing. Don't sit there looking at your messages or just checking this and that. Just put it away and just be in the room. So I think that's, you know, that's something that's just to work on. It's just today's life.
that very much brings me to the Oxford Piano Festival itself. We've been so privileged to have had you come a couple of times to play for us and to take masterclasses, and it's always a pleasure to listen to you. And we're looking forward to you this year as well. Have you had a chance to look at the program? Your great friend and collaborator, I guess, Stephen Huff is coming. Are there things you're looking forward to in the program? Oh, you've got it right there.
Look, the thing is, I think what's great about a week like this, I think it's over a week, isn't it? I haven't really checked the dates,
yes.
But is that it's great to go and hear as many people as possible, because you're going to hear a whole range of music, and everybody will play differently. And there'll be some people like Stephen Huff that, you know, people are more familiar with. I know Vikingur has been a couple of times, hasn't he, to the festival, but there'll be some people in there that maybe haven't been before or are relatively new. But, you know, just go and take on everything. And what I really love about the festival, you've got this evening recital in amazing venues. And I have to say, I'm not just saying this because you're there and this is organised by the festival itself, but actually one of my real favourite concerts last year was playing in the gorgeous cathedral. I'm particularly fond, or I was anyway, I should say, of performing kind of on ground level with people.
Yes.
And
around you.
yeah, and I really love that, because sometimes cathedrals can be a bit worrying. You're sort of up on a stage and then you don't see people at the back and you feel very distant. And I absolutely love that, the way everybody came from different angles. And it was strangely one of the most kind of intimate recitals that
Yes, it was.
I'd
Yes,
given.
it was.
So I particularly enjoy that. But you've got all these amazing people that come and give classes throughout the week, and that's fascinating, I think. So I'm looking forward to it, and it's very nice this time I get to do it twice, so I'm really looking forward.
And as a professor at the festival, what specific things do you try and bear in mind in this limited time you have with the aspirant young pianist who's, you know, sort of exposing themselves to you and hoping to get something back from you? What guides you about what bits you'll concentrate on in this very short time, but yet very intense time that you have together?
Look, a couple of things to remember there. I think it's always very brave of young people to put themselves up in that scenario because it's public, it's live streamed, and they don't know me or perhaps any of the other people that are coming. We've not met before. We just learn kind of fairly near to the time what they're going to play. And I might ask them to do all kinds of things that perhaps they're not too comfortable with. And I try to be kind of, sympathetic about that because I think it's important to try to put somebody at their ease. So I think there's a difference in the way you might approach a masterclass where you just see somebody once. I try to find something that I think they can take away. It might be just one thing that they might not even get it there and then in the class. They might think 5 years later, oh, that was...
Oh, that's what she meant.
But I try to just find something that, I think will be helpful. It's just about that. We're trying to be helpful. And I think, whereas when you're teaching somebody week by week, you see the journeys.
Yes, and you're building things, aren't you?
You see the ups and the downs.
And the downs.
And that can be over years.
Yeah.
And that can change. So it's a very different thing. I think we just go in the masterclass, try to do what we can in a kind of sympathetic way that will give young pianists something to take away.
We've had so many questions that you can't imagine, Kathy, from our audience. And some of them I've sort of tried to weave in to our conversation. And there's a few specific ones, which if I may, I'll just ask you. One was, what qualities are you looking for, whether pianistic or in personality terms, when you're auditioning piano students?
So first of all, I don't necessarily audition. There's an audition process at RNCM and all the other colleges, but I might give somebody a consultation lesson or whatever. So there are different ways to take on a student, but I'm looking for somebody that I think has got integrity. I might find out later they don't. But I think I can see something. It's potential, but potential to what, I don't know. Because sometimes people come and they might think, oh, I want to play with the Berlin Phil. And I'm thinking that might not happen, but there might be some musical potential for you.
Yeah.
It's my role to try to find it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'm speeding up now, so you can ask me some more questions.
Thank you. So one of the questions that several people are interested in is, what are your kind of consolation pieces? What do you return to, again, that you play for yourself, that you need to that comfort you or make you feel better if there's something going on? What kind of things do you turn to?
Do you know what? This is a really difficult question at the moment because I gave my last concert in December and I haven't actually sat at my own piano to play something for myself since. Now, I have tinkled away in the lessons. So I'm not trying to avoid it. I think I'm just having a very big kind of breathing space and then something will come. But I think I don't know that I've ever done that. I think, Fauré's always been the thing for me. When I play his music, I think, oh yeah, okay, great. Yeah. I think now if I had to sit down and play some music, it might be some songs. I'm a bit curious to kind of explore more songs because I didn't with singers.
Modern songs.
All kinds of songs. I mean, one of the great during COVID, I really studied Schubert's Winterreise, and this was just like a gift, from that time, just to study that.
I think we've only got about 3 or 4 minutes left. One of the questions that came up from quite a lot of people, people who maybe like me played a lot as young people, did the LRAM and so on, and then stepped away from it and then come back to it. And how do they sort of think about repertoire, and how do they think about performing with others and sort of building a life which is not just listening, as it mostly is in my case, to be honest, but actually also playing a bit, the adult performer, the adult returner.
I think for adult returners, you know, just play music that you really love. Don't be overly ambitious.
Mm.
You know, good, stretch yourself a little bit, but don't be overly ambitious. You may not have played for 25 years or something like that. And if you want to play with other people, let's say you're a pianist and you think, oh, I'd like to play some violin sonatas, you know, get on your social media, get other people on social media and say, would anybody like to do that? I think it's a good way to sort of connect. There are lots of good amateur musicians around. I'm using the word amateur because people maybe have other jobs.
Yes, yes, I completely understand. And then also in that mode, now, have you ever thought about, or have you had to do this? You have a pianist come to play for you, and they would love to have an international career, but it's not going to happen, and you can see that.
Yeah.
Are there ways that you can, you know, think about them developing a career in music, which is not as an international piano performer? Because unlike the violin, you know, there's only ever one of us and playing with the orchestra, and often we're not there at all because piano isn't.
Piano is very tricky because it is much more limited in that way, you know. So I think one of my top tips is during your studies, collaborate.
Oh,
You know, just play with as many people as you can so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And then be prepared to see what there is out there in the musical world. You know, I do try to help people with this because there are a lot of young pianists now. And I think this is something I want to devote more time to. And now I can, which is lovely.
absolutely lovely. Absolutely lovely. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. My final question is, just tell us a little bit about how you think pianism has changed in the last 30, 40 years. Do you see a difference in young pianists now to?
Gosh. Well, first of all, there are lots and lots of more young pianists and increasingly brilliant, you know, and I sometimes
Technically, the standard has gone up and the numbers have gone up, have they?
standards are kind of quite unbelievable, and that's great. But I would say, what is your voice? Because what is your sound? What is your voice on the piano? It's okay to be the fastest and the most accurate, and that's fine. There'll be another person who will also be able to do that, you know. But what makes you different? So that it's about listening, finding sound, and what do you have to say? It's not just necessarily how do you get there. What are you saying?
And then I suppose guiding them to the kind of repertoire that you think will suit them as a performer and a person.
I try.
You must.
I sometimes have resistance, but sometimes I think it might be nice to try something that I think maybe doesn't suit them, but give it a go because now is the time. You know, when people become young professionals, they don't necessarily want to be putting themselves on the line with stuff they don't know about or they haven't actually experienced. So I always think, you know, in student years, learn as much repertoire as possible. I do find people are a little bit too slow in general. So do some slow, careful work on some things, but actually just also read through things, be familiar, or go to concerts. Please go to concerts, you know, and listen and sit in the hall. Don't just listen to music on your laptop or your phone. You need to sit in and see and feel the emotion coming across the hall. See what somebody has to do to actually make a sound, you know, really penetrate to the very last row of a 2,000-seater hall. You know, you can't get that through your headphones.
There's some very powerful themes coming through from you, and a lot of it is about being in the moment and taking.
And believe in yourself and really know, I think really know that you love music, you know. I mean it's all encompassing. The very fact that I'm not playing anymore is simply somebody said to me the other day, and I sort of went like that and said, "Oh, have you just had enough?" And I thought, "Oh my God, that sounds so awful." And
Mhm.
absolutely no. I mean, I love music more than ever. I can think of probably a couple of lines of something now, and I would cry immediately, which you don't need on your screen. But you know, it's you have to know if you want to say something with the music, then you have to really love it. You might not love every single piece that you play, but you have to love it as something that you're involved with. Otherwise, why?
Kathy, what a wonderful conversation. I've always enjoyed listening to you, and I've always enjoyed listening to you playing. And it's been a complete privilege to have this chance to just explore your thoughts and your ideas
Thank
and
you.
your beliefs and your knowledge and your wisdom. And if you don't love the music, why? It's a great way to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. It's been great to talk to you and Oxford Phil for asking us to do this. It's been really good fun. Thank you.
Of course, thank you for such an incredible conversation. I think I speak for everybody when I say that was fascinating. I learned so much. It was so interesting. And thank you, Kathy, for being so honest and really telling us how you feel about everything. I think it's something that we always want to hear, so it's very reassuring when we get that. I also just want to take a minute to say thank you to everyone who joined us today and who attended. As Safi mentioned earlier, Kathy will be joining us at the Piano Festival on the 26th and the 27th of July. So please do come along and you can ask all your questions in person and have some nice conversations and hear some incredible teaching, I am sure. Um, we're hoping that this is going to be the first in a little series of Q&As that will be held over the next few years or so. So please do keep an eye on our website, our mailing list, all of the social media platforms, and we will keep you updated with that as much as we can. But yes, thank you so much again to everybody for all your support. We wouldn't be here without you, and we really appreciate it. So yes, thank you, Safi. Thank you, Kathy. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.